Good morning. Today we are very happy to have with us Pratap, who has been in the ashram many years ago and now lives in Sydney, Australia. So Pratap, welcome, and let's begin with you telling us when you first came to the ashram.
Thank you, Narad bhai, for inviting me here. I came in the ashram in 1951, just a couple of days before the annual functions of December 1 and December 2. So that was 1951.
Now, how old were you then?
1951, I have to calculate. 1938 was birth, so 48, 13
yes.
years.
Well, we were born in the same year.
We were born in the
Yes.
same year, is it?
38.
So I was 13 years old.
So tell us what brought you to the ashram.
I think the bulletin, the magazine bulletin, which comes out once a month, the photographs in the bulletin attracted me. And my father used to come regularly to the ashram from mid-20s and my mother in late 20s before our births. Before our births.
But your family was living?
In Africa, in Kenya, Nairobi. And my father, as I said, was visiting the ashram from 1924-25. He was attracted to the ashram because of Ambalal Purani. And my father had attended during India's struggle for independence the gym setups, the akhadas for wrestling and for physical education. And it was Ambalal Purani who gave my father, Shivabai Amin, some books on Sri Aurobindo. And that's how the visit started here. And my mother wanted to come here, and my father said, I cannot seek permission on your behalf. You must get permission on your own by contacting Sri Aurobindo. This story is related about my mother's arrival in Pondicherry in a small booklet written in Gujarati by my sister Sunanda Ben, who is a resident ashramite at present. And I made a translation or an English version of the same booklet, which describes my mother's first journey to Pondicherry, as I said, before any of us was born.
Did your father speak to you about his darshans with Sri Aurobindo?
He never ever made any comments about his personal experiences, but his life and his daily living was such that we imbibed a fair amount just by his example. He was a voracious reader of many things and in many languages, and he was a master of Sanskrit, Gujarati and English. And on Sri Aurobindo's centenary publications, the mother asked him to translate 2 books in Gujarati. So that was in 1972, the centenary year of Sri Aurobindo's birth. So he contributed that way as well.
So he came for the first time in 1920?
Between 20 and 25, sometime at that time. And then he went to Africa, where his brother was, and his reason for going to Africa was to do a matriculation examination so that he would be allowed to go and study law in England, which he did. Then he came back in Africa, became a barrister in law, and he was involved in public life, political life as well. At some stage, he was a member of Legislative Assembly in Kenya's colonial government. But very regularly, he visited India. And as I said, looking through the photographs of the bulletin, we felt attracted by it. And my sister Sunanda Ben, when she finished her matriculation in 1950, she came on her own to the ashram. And then receiving letters from her, we felt tempted. And we simply, myself and my sister Bhadra Ben, indicated interest to come to Pondicherry. And my father made arrangements. We came by ship from Kenya, landed in Mumbai, came by train to Pondicherry. And Manoranjanda, with my sister, came to the railway station to receive us.
And when did you first see Mother?
I saw the mother on the second day of arrival in the end of November, early December of 1951. And as it was the practice then, we used to collect flowers from the flower house, take to the mother. And my sister wanted to just experience the fragrance of the flower. And I stopped her, saying, you don't take the fragrance of flowers which you're going to offer to the mother. And Sunanda Ben corrected us and said, no, this ashram is not like ordinary temples. You are allowed to enjoy the fragrance of the flower that you are going to offer to the mother. So that was my first experience of something being different in this place.
So did you go up to Mother together?
My sister Sunanda Ben took me to the mother, and I just remember I brought a very small gift for the mother. That was a tin of car polish. I was very fond, still am fond of cars, and I used to enjoy keeping the car in very good condition, and I used to look after my father's car. So I thought, why not take something for the mother's car, for the Humber car which was then. And that's how I was introduced to Pavitrada, who was in charge of Atelier, and Abhay Singh. And I was asked to take the polish there and give a good polish to the car. And
Mother asked you?
yes,
What was your first reaction when you saw the mother?
I think total calm and joy. It wasn't words, it was simply the most expensive light that flooded me. And I always carried that within me, and I try and recall that as much as possible, because I find that that is the guiding light. And that light with joy, that combination, is the experience which has stayed with me.
How did your life begin in the ashram?
My life began very quickly joining the school, the playground, and the experience in the school was very unique. When I found that in French, I had to go with children who were significantly younger to me, 5 years, 6 years, because I didn't speak any French at all. But there were others who were senior to me in the same class. So on one side I had young Vijay Poddar, myself in the middle, and Vinatadi, Vijay's mother. All three of us learned French at the same time. And very soon I made progress in French, so I was allowed to jump classes. And that's the beauty of the ashram education system, that you are not held back because of age, and where your progress is reasonable, you are allowed to make corresponding progress. In the physical education, I enjoyed the playground very much, and I enjoyed the fact that there was such a big variety: gymnastics, athletics, minor games, major games, etc. And my weakest aspect in terms of physical education was gymnastics. And it is Tara Johar, who encouraged me in a very significant way not to give up, to keep going. So I appreciate her guidance very much too.
Which are the sports that you like most?
My favorite game was cricket, and we used to be crazy about it. And on Sunday mornings when we had cricket, the game would start at 7 o'clock. But myself with a few other friends, Ranganath, Anup and Surendra, the four of us would wake up at 4 o'clock, take our bananas and bread slices that we saved from the previous evening, and go to the sports ground, and we would roll the matting out for the wicket, and before everyone else came we would practice, and that's how our enthusiasm manifested in cricket.
Did you attend mother's classes in the playground?
Yes, I did. Mother used to give us all a very small passage to recite on the following week. And I remember one particular passage had a phrase, Mon cœur est en paix. My heart is at peace. And when I started practicing this recitation in the boarding house, Remo used to be with me. And when I practiced, he said, Pratap, do you realize what you said just now? And I said, what? He said, you have said, Mon cœur est en pain instead of paix. I said, did I? I must not say that. So I went on practicing to do the right thing. And sure enough, when the time came for me to recite in front of the mother, I said, Mon cœur est en pain. And the mother said, what? So just to let you know, paix means peace and pain means bread. And I felt let down. What have I done? And the mother said, Quoi? And I have not forgotten that ever. On the same basis, I had a reverse experience. The same four cricket fanatics, Ranganath, Surendra, Vijendra and myself, not Vijendra, Anup. The Australian cricket team was visiting for a test match in Chennai. And our senior coaches, Wilfie and Narendra Johar, had the permission to go and see the cricket match over a couple of days. So the four of us went to the mother to seek permission. Can we go and see the cricket match, at least for a day? And the mother asked, how will you go there? And I said, we have just saved enough money to go by the bus. Where will you be staying? We had not thought about it. And the mother said, there is a gentleman with the name Mr. Tandon in Chennai. Make sure you make a contact with him. He will make arrangements for you. And then she said, you've been protected in the ashram environment. I suggest you don't drink any water once you leave the ashram. Take as much water as you can in the jugs from the filters, and when you run short of it, you may drink tea or coffee or coconut water. Do not take water from any other source. This is the care she gave us, she showered us with. So we went to the cricket match, enjoyed, came back, and many people were surprised that we were actually given the permission to go and do this. Because in those days, the discipline in the playground was fairly strict. We were not allowed to miss the regular classes, but here was an exemption granted to us.
Which was the year?
That was in 1956.
So that time cricket was played in the ashram.
Very much
part
so.
of,
Very much so.
competition.
All internal competitions used to be there. There used to be cricket matches with some local teams, especially with cricketers from Annamalai University. They used to visit the ashram, and sometimes the ashram team used to go there to play games as well.
So mother used to come and watch?
Mother did not come to watch cricket, but mother attended gymnastic competition, athletics in general, and cricket used to start at very early hours because it had, otherwise it was too hot to play later on.
So who you were teachers in the school?
I remember my first French teacher was not a French person. She used to live next to Nipenda's nursery, and I'm trying to remember her name. Pavita. Pavita was an English lady who had settled in the ashram, and she was a very good teacher of French. And Raj Kumari ji, Krishna Kumari ji, Suprabhadi, Sumitra di, Ranjit, Manoj da, Nirod da, and Ranju da. These are the teachers I remember over various years and various subjects.
Did you ever study with Temiben?
Yes, thank you, Temiben. I used to fear going to Temiben's classes. She was such a gentle, calm lady. The reason why I feared going to her classes was she insisted that we recite poems. And I used to freeze reciting poems. I didn't mind writing essays, reading out essays, but reciting poems, I dreaded. I don't dread it anymore. And I think her encouragement made its mark slowly but clearly in my life. And in terms of Gujarati language, my tutors were Pujalal and Sundaram, and the way they taught me Gujarati has stood me in good stead even now.
Can you tell us some of your remembrances of Mother, just going around when you had darshans with her? Just elaborate on that. You had said a few things to me, just anecdotes and remembrances.
Yeah. I remember one particular situation where I had started learning to play the bamboo flute, and Runu Ganguly, he taught us just how to play the scale and said, now you're on your own. As much work you put in, you'll get result out of it. I will not be teaching you anymore except how to play the scale. And together with Hansdev, Vishwabandhu's brother, myself, Vishwabandhu himself, three of us started playing learning to play the flute together. And once there was a program in the playground where the Garba dance was going to be performed with live music. So Madhumalti, Khodabai's daughter, Baba Bhai's sister, Baba Bhai Patel's sister, she was the singer and I was accompanying on the flute, and that was my first public performance of playing the flute in front of the mother. And before the song started, I played an introductory tune, and while playing I turned towards the map of Mother India where Mother herself was seated, and I've experienced the eye contact. Rest of my music was not thought of. It simply worked its way, and I've not forgotten that experience either. And then after, in 1959, I left the ashram. At that time, I had the urge to go out and study higher education in different fields which were not then available in the ashram school. I went back to Kenya, studied land surveying and mapping. And it took me 10 years to come back to the ashram after that. Meanwhile, I got married, had 2 children. So I came with my wife and the 2 children, and we were all very fortunate. We visited and had darshan of the mother. And that was a homecoming which registered for me that I must come here more regularly. And I've been coming at least once a year, and sometimes I've stretched it to once in 2 years. But that homecoming after 10 years reconnected me to the ashram. In fact, I felt guilty when I first left. What am I doing? Am I doing the right thing or not? But the mother guided me in those days. Pavitrada used to correspond with me. And he said, East Africa, where you're going, that place is the right place for you, and you will be useful to those countries as well in terms of the studies which you're going to do. After coming back to Pondicherry on a visit in '69, I went to Netherlands for studying aerial surveying and mapping. Came back to Kenya and worked for a few years, went to England in 1970 for 2 years, and then in 1974 we went to Australia, Sydney, and we are still there. And in Australia I have carried on with some of the activities which I was familiar with from my days in Pondicherry, music being one of them. And we meet regularly with friends to do devotional music. We have another group which is once a month. We call it Swadhyay, self-study group, where people prepare some small short talks and share with each other. And we are very fond of doing bushwalking, and Australia has very good bushwalks designed and organized. So we keep in touch with nature as well.
Now, have these people asked you about your past and Mother and Sri Aurobindo?
Yes, this comes about whenever I say that during the month of November or December I'm going to India, and they'll say, where do you go? Do you go to Gujarat, to your home village? And I would say, no, my home is in Pondicherry. And they'll say, where is it? Then I'll draw a small map of India, show them Chennai, Mumbai, Calcutta, Delhi, and show them where Pondicherry is, and give them a very brief history of why Pondicherry is different to rest of India, and the French connection, but more than anything else, Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry. And then I explain very briefly why this is my home. And I think then they realize how my methods of dealing with various activities are a bit different to what they've experienced elsewhere. One of the items which surprises people in Sydney, the Indian friends in Sydney, is my fuss, my drive for people to be punctual. And they say, it's because you lived in England. And I said, no, I've not learned to be punctual by being in England. I learned it in Pondicherry. They said, in India, Pondicherry? And I would say, yes. That's not possible. Everybody keeps Indian time. And I say, you've got only 24 hours in a day. Nobody has more than 24 hours. So we must respect time, because that indicates respect for one another. So it's not my selfish need that I insist upon people being punctual, but it displays concern for everyone's time.
You mentioned that you have begun a small home choir.
That home choir began in a very unusual way. My grandson, who was then 3, he's 8 now, he would ask me to read stories at his bedtime. And when I exhausted my list of stories that I had in my mind, I would simply sing to him very softly, chant Om, and asked him to sing with me. And he started making observations, and once he said, Dada, my Om lasts longer than yours. And I said, how did you manage that? And he said, you know something, when you sing Om, your mouth opens when you are saying O, and it shuts when you are saying Ma. And I said, indeed, you cannot say Ma with your mouth open. Try it. I said, I can't. I have to bring my lips together to say Ma. And I can't say O with the mouth open. So I have observed your face doing that. And then I take very deep breath so that I can sing longer than you. And that encouraged me. When I visited my grandson's primary class, Standard 1, I introduced music to the class in a playful way, and we introduced Om as well. And we found all children responded, because there's no grammar to it. There is no technique of music that we introduce. We simply said, do Om and have fun with it. So that was my initial introduction with young children. Then in our devotional music session, many shlokas start with the word Om. And I just gave a small introductory explanation about what Om stands for and its significance. And people enjoyed that, and we sing and chant Om whenever we feel that the time is conducive to it. So we use that as introduction to many songs. We revert back to Om. So that's our progress towards Om choir. It's not as well settled as it is done in the ashram and at Aurobindo, but we are very happy that what we have started will lead to something further.
I wanted to ask if you received letters from Mother, birthday cards. Did you have any correspondence with her?
I had correspondence with the mother, but what I remember more than anything else is that in the school we used to be given recognition for hard work, good work, for achievement. And I also remember that I became a bit unpopular because I broke several traditions. One of them was that when you got a prix d'honneur in a particular year, the prize given by the mother was the latest publication of Tintin. Tintin is a French, what do you call it? It is not a storybook, but it is an illustrated story, very popular amongst all age groups. And the practice used to be that once you have read it, you give it to the library so that others would read it. And I went and asked the head of the school, this has been given to me as a prize by the mother. Is there any objection if I kept it for myself? After all, mother has given it to me. So the headmaster, Shishirda was the headmaster at that time, said, I said no objection, but I tell you what, you give it to the ashram library first, let all children read it, then you retrieve it for yourself and you can keep it. That's what I did. And that was the exception because everybody else left their Tintin there. I allowed everyone to read it and then took it back because the mother's signature was on it. So that was the reason. Another tradition I broke, not on my own, but together with my same friends that I mentioned, Rangnath, Surendra, Anup and myself, we were in green group where Tara was captain. And at the annual review, we are supposed to go to the next group, which was the red group. Red group had boys and girls together, just as the green group had boys and girls together. For some reason, we decided that we would like to go to grey group, where Monada was captain, and bypass the red group. Now, this will need permission of Pranada, but we worked on Monada first, and we asked him, before we go to Pranabda, we want to seek your permission. Would you accept us in the grey group? Monada had no hesitation. Certainly, but you must get Pranabda's permission. We went to Pranabda, said Monada has agreed to have us if you do not have any objection. Pranabda approved. And everyone was very surprised, especially those who went from the green group to red group. They expected us to join with them, and here we are with a completely different uniform for the playground, did the march past in the grey group. So that was another break of tradition that involved us.
And why did you want to bypass the red group?
Oh, that's a very sensitive question. We wanted to keep away from girls. The girls were annoyed, but as you know, we can have friendship except outside groups limits as well. So all was forgiven because our smiles and our friendship continued regardless of the group demarcation.
So what correspondence did you have with mother? Did you write letters to her with questions?
I wrote letters to the mother with small requests. For example, if I wanted a plug where I could use an electric iron, we needed permission for such things. We had to ask permission of the mother. And most of the time, we will get those permissions. We would run into problems sometimes. For example, mosquito net was essential to survive attacks from mosquitoes. And mosquito nets could be torn very easily if you don't sleep calmly. You kick around, there'll be holes in the mosquito net, and we had to take them to the mosquito net department. And the department was run by a certain lady called Padmasini. And she would make a face if we took the mosquito net more than once a month. And she would then just patch it, not with a net, but with a cloth, which would reduce air flowing through. So you damage the mosquito net, you live with it as it is. We didn't dare ask the mother to be given a new mosquito net because the damage was done by us through our carelessness. But when I was in Africa, I used to write to the mother for guidance, and I would get a reply to those letters through Pavitrada. He used to present my letter to the mother, and the mother would ask him to reply to me, and that's how I kept in touch with the mother as well.
When you left ashram, did you ask the mother's permission to go?
Yes, indeed. I went to the mother in the playground and indicated to her what I wished to do. She checked where I was going. She checked if my father was likely to stay in the same place to guide me upon my return. She took care of all those details, gave me blessings. That's how I left for Kenya in 1959.
Coming back to Europe, can you tell something about your good captains? Who were the captains and what guidance you got from them?
My first experience with the captain, as I said, was with Tara Johar. She was very strict, but she also had a smile on her face. She had a good sense of humor, and she did not think that anything was impossible. So she removed all sense of fear of getting hurt. And as I said, she was very strict. She demanded discipline, and most of us reciprocate. And there would be one or two people who will try and cross the border from time to time, but Tara will pull them in. And that experience has remained with me, that when you want others to collaborate with you, there are certain methods, certain approaches, body language. They are very effective tools to have collaboration with colleagues and with juniors. One of the coaches whose influence is still with me now is Tara's brother Narendra, who used to be in the grey group, but he was a coach in various activities, athletics, cricket, football, etc. And he took very deep interest in our well-being, make us read articles on sports, history of sportsmen and how sports was an integral part of education, and this was conveyed to us in a very beautiful way. The other thing about sports and activities is that teachers who are senior to us, yet in the playground, they would be within our team. Sometimes we would be better than the teachers, and we didn't hesitate playing with our seniors, basketball, tennis, etc. There were no age or gender barriers. And in those days, the rest of India would shy away from those situations, whereas here the integration was real, and the living of integrated education is what we still carry within ourselves.
Do you have any memories of Nalini and Amrita?
Amrita, once upon a time, used to manage money matters in the ashram. And my father used to send some funds to give to the 4 children of his, my 2 sisters, myself and my younger brother Jyotindra. And the check used to come to Amrita, and he would call us and say, your father has sent some money. How are you going to use this money? My sister, who was the eldest, was made the custodian of those funds. And if we needed something which was not there from prosperity distribution, but just to indulge in some interest like collecting stamps, etc., and we needed some funds, she would release the funds slowly to us. And then Amrita guided us into something different. He said, see, whenever the money comes, go to the office of Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma used to be the treasurer for the ashramites. He used to keep accounts of everyone's money, and whenever we needed money, he will open a book and he'll say, there's 25 rupees in your account. How much do you want now? And we'll say 3 rupees. We'll enter, put the record straight. So Amrita introduced us to that aspect of life. Nalini, one of the 100 meters race that I was part of, I participated with Nalini. And in the early days, he used to defeat me. And then as I grew up, I became stronger. He was the first one to congratulate me when I defeated him. And Nalini used to play football every now and then, even at his advanced age. And I corresponded with Nalini as well. And he always, without fail, replied to my letters.
Do you still have some of those letters?
Unfortunately, my movement from Africa to Europe, back to Africa, and then to Australia, I have not got many letters. And then once the books which I had kept with the letters were damaged due to white ants and rain in one of the places in Pondicherry where I had tried to keep them, and some of them were lost on that account. I remember that the most beautiful card that used to be given in the playground activities was for combatives: wrestling, boxing, and stick activities. Stick activities used to be a long bamboo stick, and Vasudev Bhai used to teach us how to wield the stick. And we decided that if we won a prize there, it had a beautiful lion which was the picture was put up by Sanjeevanda, and anyone who won in the combatives was given that prize with mother's signature. And I decided that I've got all different types of cards except that one. But this competition about lathi and the short srikati was not very popular. So I have a confession to make. We made a deal, and this is not like the deals which you see in modern sports where people make money out of it, but I wanted to win that prize. So Anup and myself, we went and registered for Kathi and Lathi. So there were two competitions. One he won, the other one I did, and we both got those prizes where the recognition was with that picture of lion and mother's signature.
Who
I
was
still
teaching the Lati?
Vasudev Bhatt, the one who was in
Krishna
charge
Lal's brother.
of the Krishna Lal's brother, and then he set up the art studio. I think that's what it is called, the studio.
I want to know how you tackled sports injuries.
Sports during.
Injuries during competitions, games.
I had one injury which I remember very clearly. After an 800-meter race, which I came second, I think, the tracks used to be marked with brick inlay. So bricks would be dug in vertically and they would be painted white. And one brick was standing proud. I tripped after the finishing line and I had a scrape on my elbow here. And the mother saw the bandage there, said, "What happened?" So I explained to her and she said, "But you finished the race." I said, "Yes." "You were second?" I said, "Yes." "Take care of it." And after 2 days, when I went to get the bandage removed, Nipenda said, "You got an infection." And that infection stopped me from doing sports for a while because I developed fever. And then it took about 2-3 months for that, for me to get over that infection, and it infected a gland up here, and it had to go through a surgical procedure, and that was my only injury in sport. And I still remember mother saying that most injuries or accidents are because of lack of concentration. So being aware and concentrating prevents most injuries and accidents. I try and remember that.
What can you tell us about the moments when you went before the mother? Not inner experiences, but just when you went before her.
In the playground, on some days the mother used to distribute roasted peanuts. I used to be very fond of those peanuts. And the mother had a large spoon. Amyada would carry the container, and mother would look at every recipient, and the recipient would say, "Pati, dummy, plein." And I would always say plein. I wanted the full scoop. So on those days, I used to think, today is Peanuts Day. I must remember to say plein. So I'm just telling you, sharing with you, that my focus was on peanuts. But I made sure that my request was registered, as indeed it always was. I got plentiful of peanuts from the mother. throughout my stay here. So minor things like that. And we used to have fun in the playground as well. There was one captain who was the most uncaptain-like. I don't know if I can share this with you or not.
Don't say names, but you can tell the story.
So if I don't say name, half the story is lost because the fun is in the name itself. But I don't think that person would object to it.
All right.
That person is no more. This experience is an example of how everything was not always serious. This newly appointed captain was given the name Espoir by the mother. She had a difficulty in doing a normal march. Her left arm would go with the left leg and the right arm with the right leg. And Pranabda would keep saying, Espoir, left leg, right arm, right leg, left arm. And he would keep repeating this. Children who were under Espoir as captain, some of them could not say the word Espoir very easily. So they turned it into Espro. Espro is a medicine based on aspirin, but the trade name, which was very popular in India then, was Espro. And they would call her Espro. And she would complain to Pranabda, look at these children, they are calling me Espro. Why can't you tell them your name is Espoir? She said, I do, but they revert back to calling me Espro. And one day, when Espoir still marched with left leg, left arm, right leg, right arm, exasperated, Pranabda said, Espro, left leg, right arm. And the entire playground broke into a big laughter at that time, including the mother who was present during the march past.
You remember Purani?
I remember Purani for several reasons. One was that my first competition in wrestling was to wrestle against Tara, my captain, who was significantly stronger than I was, my senior, but for some reason we got matched for that competition, and Purani was the adjudicator, and he kept on encouraging me, go on Pratap, don't give up. And I remember those moments with Purani. That was my first experience. Later on, when I started playing table tennis regularly, he used to call anyone who wanted a game of table tennis with him. He was ever ready. And he played very competitive table tennis. And he had something in him which was very unusual. While playing table tennis, he would involve his entire body, and he reminded me of Hanuman, having fun, jumping while smashing the ball, retrieving the ball, and he was a joy to watch.
Ambu?
I have two things to say about Ambu. At every darshan, Ambu used to give a demonstration about different asanas. And the asana which was the most popular from the spectator point of view was the last one. It was called Shavasana, the death pose, where he would stretch his body, make it stiff, no apparent movement of the lungs, and there will be 4 people at the 4 corners of the 2 sticks upon which on a stretch cloth is lying down, and it is death posture. That would be his last asana after finishing all others, and he'll be carried away from the playground and people will break into an applause. And we ended up giving names to people. We used to have fun translating Indian name into literal English meaning. Like Daya Bhai was called Brother Wisdom. Rangnath was called Paint Master. When it came to Ambu, we ended up with Ambu, the flexible bamboo, because he was so flexible. His muscles lean, shiny, and totally under control. He could do anything that he wanted to do with his body. Ambu was very strict as well, and his strictness was manifested in terms of looking after the mango tree in Nantai. In the Nantai, you know, there is a circle where people park their bicycles. In the middle, there is a mango tree. That mango tree has now aged significantly, but once upon a time, it used to have regular yield of mangoes. We were not allowed to pluck mangoes, mainly because the dining room had a system of collecting fruits, and children were not encouraged to climb trees to pluck mangoes, etc., because it will disrupt life in general and create a mess. And one day, my brother Jyotindra with Robert Allen, Olga's son, they were about 5, he was about 5 years old, my brother was about 8, I was about 14. And they wanted to bring some mangoes down. And they were on the lookout. If Ambu is around, their ears would get twisted. So one person is on the lookout, the other one is trying to fetch mangoes down. A few mangoes came down, and Robert was caught with mangoes in his hands. And Ambu got hold of him. What is this? He said, I think they are mangoes. You think they are mangoes? Yes, they are mangoes. How did they come in your hand? He looked up, he looked around, he looked at Ambu. How did you get these mangoes? Shoes flying, mango falling. And Ambu broke into a smile and sort of twisting his ear, patted him on the neck and said, run away from here. That was Ambu. You might hear the story told slightly differently from someone else, but this is how I recollect it.
So after you left ashram and when you came back, there is a significant development in the ashram.
Yeah.
So what are the changes you see after you left the ashram?
If I say something about an item which is of practical importance, in the 50s, bicycle was the main item with which we moved, but the use of bicycle was very strictly regulated. We had to have a bell and a light, otherwise the cycle would not be registered. The mother had made sure that all bicycles belonging to ashram people were registered, and there were 2 persons who were appointed as regulators of everything to do with bicycles. Chandrakant Patel was one of them, Gangaram was another one. So all bicycles had a serial number painted on them. And we used to have a bicycle test before we were allowed to go out on the streets to ride. And in the playground, in the tennis ground, Chandrakant used to drop certain lines, make sure that we can maneuver properly, keep to the left. After many years, when I came back to the ashram, I found that those rules were no longer in practice. People ride without lights, without bells, riding on the left or right, cutting corners. Those items are not taken care of. Yet, I find that in the ashram notice board, those rules are still written and displayed. But that's where they are. They are not so on the ground. And movement for pedestrians has become much more hazardous. And there's cyclists not maintaining those rules. Cycles have been motorized into scooters or motorbikes. So what is the weakness to start with has been magnified. And I think that's a sad thing to see.
How many cycles we had those days in the ashram?
If I start with cars, in all of Pondicherry there were about 8 or 9 cars. And the ashram had them, most of them, about 6 cars. And cycles, I think there would be around 150, 200 cycles. I'm talking about early 50s. People used to take care of their cycles very much. They used to clean them regularly, oil them regularly. We used to have a demonstration of how to look after cycles.
So cycles were provided by the mother for their needs?
Yes, they were provided by the mother, especially for the workers and others who had to travel significant distances. And those who could provide for themselves, mother encouraged them to have it, but they still had to be registered under the ashram discipline, even if you paid for them yourself.
Before we conclude our
Yeah.
wonderful visit today with your remembrances, if you could share with us perhaps the greatest moments of your remembrances of Mother and the ashram.
I would like to say that the years that I spent in the ashram, from the very first day until I made the departure in 1959, the guidance that we got in the playground and in the school and life in general, mother's guidance filtered through in many ways. And we could see this through the teachers and the captains and the darshan days when we would be going to the mother, on the birthdays when we went to the mother. Those moments have contributed the greatest to development of my ideas, my life, my love and joy in making progress, and mother's presence has been the guiding light all through my life, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very happy for that.
Thank you.